Hello good people and welcome to Finance Skills Hub. Here we learn, we connect and we grow. The whole idea of creating a dashboard in Excel is to be able to present your key indicators at a glance. But sometimes when you have so many charts to present, it can be challenging trying to fit all the charts in one page. In this short video, we are going to explore how to stage multiple charts and then be able to switch using one single slicer. So it makes it easier for you to use your dashboard estate very well. So if you're game, join me in Excel and let's go through this together. Okay, so we start off with this HR data. So we have some business units here, gender, ethnicity, and all these attributes, right? So let's assume that you want to be able to create charts to break down annual salary by these columns, okay? Now, it can be very clumsy if you have to fit all these charts. So we want to create something like this. Okay, so the basic idea is that we should be able to have a breakdown of gender by head count, check the average numbers, okay, and then have a slicer to be able to show by department. Okay, so this is what we want to achieve on the left side. Then on the right side, if you notice, we had business units, country, department, and ethnicity, okay, all in these columns. Now we have staged 4 charts, and then when I click on any of these slicers, you'll notice that my chart breaks down by any of the items that I select in the slicer. If I don't select anything, I get an indication to select an item. Okay, so this could have been many charts, but because we've used the option to switch the slicers, we are able to achieve this. So we're going to start from scratch and I'll show you how this was done. We've shared the start worksheet with you so you can come along and then practice. Right. So we are going to start off by inserting a pivot table on this table. Okay. Then we'll do our calculations and then we'll fit it in our dashboard. So this is already a table. I've named it data. Okay, so if you go to the table name, this is what we have. So you stand in the table and then you go to insert. Then you have a pivot table here. Okay, so you click on insert pivot table. Now because we want to capture the item you have selected in the slicer, instead of just proceeding as a normal pivot table, you have to add this to the data model. Right, so check this box to add it to the data model. And then we click OK. So once this comes in, we now have to create a staging for the first side of our dashboard, right? So we need to create a pivot table that breaks down the annual salary by gender, and we find the average as well. So what we're going to do is we'll locate annual salary, drag this into the value section. So this is what we have. Then on the row side, I'll take gender and then break it down by rows. Okay. Now, beyond being able to see this by total annual salary, I want to be able to also see it by average salary. So after splitting this by gender, what I want to do is change the operation in the value section. So I'll click and then go to value field settings. And then instead of sum, I'm going to average and I'll click OK. So this gives me the average salary. Okay. Now, aside the average calculation, I also want to do a head count, right? So to do a head count, I can pull the full names and then put it in the value section. Okay, this way it counts the names for me. Okay, so this is the head count for all the stuff in the organization. Okay, now all we need to do is reference these in here. So if you look at the start worksheet, what we have here is just a basic shape. It's a circle, okay, that has been placed over 4 rectangles. Okay, so we basically set this up so that we are able to fit our charts and then also the key variables or the key indicators around here, right? So now that we have this, we just come and select this text box, okay, which is already filled in with a placeholder number. So I'll come in here, put in an equal to, and here I'm fitting it with a head count for males. So I'll come and then select the head count for males, press enter, so I get 508. I'll do the same thing for females, select the borderline of the text box, go to my formula, equal to, come to my sheet, and then select the head count for females, which is 492. Later I will come and format these. Okay, now for my average salaries, I want the numbers to be truncated, right? So instead of showing all these numbers, I want to reduce it to a K, right? So I'll highlight this, press Ctrl 1, go to custom, okay, and then in the type section, highlight this and then type 0.00. This gives me 2 decimal places. I'll bring a comma, right, and then I'll add a K to this, okay, in double quotes, right? If you want it in 1 decimal place, you can make it 0.0 as well. So the basic idea is to be able to present the numbers instead of the 3 zeros, we present that with a K. So I'll click OK, and then I get something like this. So now that I have this, I can come to my dashboard, okay, select the placeholder, click equal to, and then come to my sheet. So for males, this is our average salary. I'll put this in here. And then for females, I'll select this, bring in an equal to, and then select for females average salary. Okay, so this completes our first round of visualization. The next thing we need to do is to now bring in our Doughnut chart. So the Doughnut chart basically compares the total salary in terms of percentages split by gender, female and male. Okay, so to be able to do that, we go back to our pivot table. Now we could fit this inside this pivot table, but we want to put a chart on it. So we want to create a separate pivot table for that purpose. It can easily be done by copying this existing pivot table. So I highlight everything, then I leave some gap and then paste this here. I mean, ideally, you should place your pivot tables in separate worksheets, but for learning purposes, I'll put them side by side. Okay, so when this comes in, we basically want the total annual salary. So I'm going to take off the count of full name, and then instead of average, okay, I'll come back here to value field settings, and then I'm going to choose sum. Okay, so this will now give me the total salary for the gender. I want to see this in percentage terms, so I'll just right click this and then come to show values as, and then choose percentage of grand total, right? So this gives me the split of annual salary between females and males. Now that I have this, I can insert my chart. So I can come to insert, okay, and then choose a Doughnut chart for this purpose. Okay, so this is my Doughnut chart. So usually we want our charts to be clean. So I'm going to remove the field buttons and the legend here. So I'll select the pivot chart analyze, come to field buttons, and then I'll hide all the field buttons. Okay, then I'll also take off my total. Right, now for my legend, we've already made provision for it with the icons, so I'm going to delete this. So this is my Doughnut chart. I'll cut this and then come to my dashboard. So I'll paste this. Okay, now I need to align this in such a way that it sits nicely on the shape in the background. Okay, now you will notice that this is a regular circle. As I indicated earlier, the borderline has been thickened to give that 3D effect. These are regular icons. Okay, so color these to match the colors in the ring of the Doughnut chart. Right, so if I bring this here, I'll initially set this on top. Okay, come to format. Okay, first thing I want to do is under shape fill, I want to take off the fill and then make this a no fill. Okay, then I can add my data labels. Okay, so my data labels come in here. We'll format this later. Now I need to expand the charts. Okay, so to maintain the proportions, I normally prefer doing it directly under the format of the chart. Okay, if these two numbers, which is the height and width, are equal, at least I get to align it with my circle in the background. Right, so depending on the configuration of your laptop, you could start off with some 2 key numbers. So in my case, I want to try 4 and 4 for both height and width. Okay, now if I get this, I can now take this. So I can now take my chart and then try and align it nicely to maintain the proportions. Okay, it looks like this works, but if you like to just show a bit of the gray, you can now come in and then maybe reduce it by just a point. So I'll choose 3.9, 3.9. Okay, this way I see a bit of the gray for my 3D effect. Right, so with this, I can lay this out. Okay, so now that we have our chart in place, let's format it a bit. So on this left side, we have the female. So I'll select this portion of the donut chart. You select it twice so that you just lock in the ring on the right side. So once this is in, I will come to format, okay, and then shape fill. Right, now for this shade of red, okay, you can go to more fill colors. Okay, we are using this shade of red. So if you eyeball, this is a bit softer, closer to pink. Okay, so this is the shade of red we are using, and I'll click OK. So it ties in with my icon. Then on the left side, I'll click twice. On the male side, repeat the same process. So I'll go to format, shape fill, and then for the blue for males, I'm going to use this one here. Okay, so once I have this, I can now color my labels. So I'll come in here and then choose white for this, and maybe even bold in it. So right after, you can select the border lines, come to your format, and then under shape outline, you choose no outline. Okay, so this completes the left side. We can now format these numbers. So I'll select the head count and then select the average numbers. Okay, come here, increase it to about 16 depending. Okay, and then I'll apply the same color I used on this side. Then repeat same for females. Select the shape. Okay, hold Control, select this one. I'll come in here and then put this at 16 as well. Okay, then I'll align the colors. Okay, so this is just to show you how you can use the space well. So instead of spreading it horizontally, you could use this schema or smart art to be able to show all your key indicators. So now let's pay attention to how we can stage these 4 charts and then switch it using the slicer, right? So to be able to do this, the first thing that we need to do is to bring all the column headers that we have here, right? I mean, you could break it down by any column header. So in our case, we want to break down by department, business unit. Okay, so we'll do ethnicity and then we'll add country, right? So let's see how to go about this. So I'll come here. I already indicated that the name of my table is called data. So my first job is to get all the column headers from my table. So to be able to do that, I'll call the name of my table, which is data, bring a square bracket, okay, come down here and then choose headers, right? So headers is part of the components of the table. I'll close my square bracket. Now, if you are using a more recent version of Excel, you have dynamic arrays. So if you have dynamic arrays, it basically spills all your outputs or answers over cells instead of in a single cell, right? So if I press enter, you realize that I have the full list of all my column headers from the date. I'm doing this way so that I'm sure that the formula I use will pick the exact names as I have them in the headers. Now, to see it clearly, I'm going to run transpose, okay, on this original formula. So I'll close my formula, press enter. I have my full list here. Now this is a formula. So what I'm going to do is I'll right click, hold, drag, and then drag it back in, okay, to be able to copy here as values only. You could also copy and paste as values, okay. Now I'm doing this so that I can eliminate and keep the ones that I need. So for what we want to do, we want to be able to break down by business unit, country, department, and ethnicity. So I'll select department, business unit, ethnicity, okay, and then country, okay. So these ones, I'm going to apply a red color, right? And then I can now sort. So I'll highlight these, go to data, and then sort. Okay. I first have to uncheck that my data has headers so that I have the full list, and then sort this on font color. Okay. Now in the order, I'm putting the red font on top, and then I'll click OK. Okay. So this way I can now eliminate the ones that I don't need. So these are the columns we want to create 4 charts out of, if you like. Okay, I'm going to name this select item. Okay, and I can bring back the automatic color for these fonts. Okay, you could also type this, but just ensure that the names are consistent with the headers. Okay, so now that we have this, we want to convert this into a table. So I would go to insert and then insert a table on this. Okay, ensure that my table has headers is checked, and then I click OK. Now this table will produce a slicer, but to be able to use the item we have selected in the slicer, we need to load it into the data model. Okay, so in Excel, the data model lives in Power Pivot. So if you don't have Power Pivot enabled as one of the tabs here, you can go to data, okay, and then use this icon here to enable the data model. So it opens up the Power Pivot window and you can close it. After that, you should see Power Pivot here, right? I already have Power Pivot installed, so I'll click on Power Pivot, and while standing in this table, I'm going to add this to the data model. Okay, so I'll click add this to the data model. Okay, so I'm now in Power Pivot, and you notice that my table, which wasn't actually named, it's called table 2. I have all my select items here. Earlier, we loaded original table into the data model, so you also see that here. So this is the Power Pivot environment. So that's all we need to do, ensure that the table has arrived here. So I'm going to close this and then come back and then continue my work. So now that I'm sure this table is in the data model, I can stand in any empty space and then insert a slicer. So I'll go to insert, then insert a slicer over here. Now this dialog box pops up. So I'll switch to the data model. I have 2 tables, click open, and then over here, I need to identify the table and then check select item. So this will bring me a slicer that outputs all the items that I have here, right? So we can click on these buttons to select the item that we are interested in. Okay, now what we want to achieve is this. If I select business units, I need that output in a cell. Okay, so that's why we went through the whole data model. So to be able to do that, we can use a function called cube ranked member. It's part of a list of cube functions. As long as your data is in the data model, you can use these functions to retrieve items from the data model, right? So for this purpose, we'll start an equal to and then bring in the function cube ranked member. But basically, we just have to reference the data model. So once you bring the open bracket, you bring a double quote, your data model is referenced, tab it, and then you close the double quote. Okay. Then you bring a comma. So after the comma, we need to put in a set expression, right? So in simple terms, this slicer is a set. Okay. So we can reference that slicer in here. So all slicers start with SL. So when I type SL, I see slicer select item, right? So I'll put in this, then I'll bring a comma, then I'll put in the rank. So the rank is just the position of the item you have selected. So we'll put in 1 so that it brings us the first item that we've selected. So that's all we need for this function. I'll close my brackets and then I'll press enter. So you notice that I've selected business unit, it pops up here, and then country is here, department is there, and then ethnicity. So that's how it works. If I've not selected anything and I clear, I get all. Okay, so we are going to take advantage of this to be able to reference the particular column that we are interested in. Now, when this is selected, what we basically want is that go to that column and then bring us the unique items in that column, right? So I need the unique departments in this case. To be able to do that, we are going to use the unique function present in a recent version of Excel. So I'll use unique, okay? Now the name of my table is called data, right? I'll bring a square bracket and then I'll reference department, okay? So this is when I am typing it directly. So if I close my brackets, this is what I want, the unique departments, okay? But I want this to be dynamic. So I want the formula unique, okay, to reference whatever has been placed in this cell, right? So to be able to do that, I'm coming to replace this whole department, okay, and then join it with a cell reference. So to be able to do that, you have to use the character ampersand, right? So ampersand is a joiner, the and sign. Okay, so I'll do that one and then come and select this cell. Okay, so I'll select this cell and then add another ampersand. Okay, so once you have this, you lock in the cell in the middle. Now that will render the text before as regular text. So what you need to do is put in a double quote right before D and then come after the opening square bracket and then put in another double quote, right? So that this text is now being joined with the reference here. So after doing this, on the other side, you need to also come and then after the ampersand, put in a double quote before the closing square bracket, go to the back, go after the closing bracket, and then repeat the double quotes. Okay, so this way you now have a direct reference to the cell. Now, if we leave it like this, it's just going to render this input as regular text and not a reference to a column in the table, right? So after doing this, you have to wrap a function called indirect, okay? That will make it a reference to the table. So you come and stand right after the open bracket and then you do an indirect, okay, open bracket, and then you close the final bracket, which should be a black, okay? So this will be your full formula. It makes it dynamic. So now if I press enter, I can now see the unique entries in each column, okay? So if you're going to create a chart, this is one of the sides of the chart that you will need. Okay, now that we have this, let's now bring in the values. Okay, so we want to sum the annual salary for each item that we have on the left side. Now we are going to use some ifs, but again, we have to make use of this indirect reference. So copy the indirect function from the red bracket all the way to the closing red bracket. Control C, we'll need this. Okay, then we come and start our sum ifs function. So equal to sum ifs, open brackets. Now my sum range is going to come from data, open square bracket, annual salary. Okay, this is going to be fixed because we always need to sum the annual salary. Okay, if you're writing this, I'm currently at business unit. So for my criteria range, I need to reference the column that contains the business unit. So I'll go back to my table, data, open square bracket, and then I'll reference business unit. Okay, so in place of the business unit, we want to make this dynamic. So that is why you copied the formula. So we are going to replace the whole of this, okay, with the formula that we did earlier so that it references this cell. And then for our criteria, we already have our criteria spelling down here. So I'll select this first one, bring in a hash to be able to select the entire thing. That's what you have with dynamic arrays. So we are using a recent version of Excel. All these features are available. Then I'll close my brackets. So the expectation is that if I press enter, I should now see the calculation of total annual salary based on the item that I have selected. Okay, so currently I've selected department. If I format this, okay, Control Shift 1, it will be good to sort this because we want to create a chart out of this. To be able to sort, okay, I need to join the two arrays. So this array is on the item I've selected, and then this is the calculation, right? I need the two together. So I can apply a sort to those two arrays together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand in another cell, reference this first part, and then put in a hash, bring a column, and then select this other part, put in a hash. Okay, so this way I'm just joining the two, and I'll press enter. Right, so I now have my two arrays combined. So now I'm going to apply a sort on the second column of this array. So I'll click right after my equal sign and then bring in a sort. So this is my array. Then I'll stand right after the array, bring a comma. My sort index is the column in my array that I want to sort. So I want to sort on the second column, I'll put in 2. And then the sort order, I'll maintain it as ascending, right? So I'll close this and then I'll press enter. Now I'm doing it this way because when the chart comes in, it plots the bars in the reverse so that we have the highest going down to the lowest. So I have the staging of my charts ready. I'll just stand in the first cell because it's an array. Go to insert, okay, and then insert a recommended chart. So I'll choose the bar chart in this case, and then I'll click OK. Okay, so this is what we wanted to achieve. So instead of creating 4 charts, okay, on business unit, country, department, and ethnicity, I can now switch, okay, and then see all these charts and control it with a slicer, right? So this is an easier way to have all the 4 charts displayed in your dashboard. So now that we have this, let's take these 2 elements to our dashboard and format them. So I'll select the chart, control, select my slicer, cut this. Temporarily I'll get an error, but I'll come to my dashboard and then paste these here, right? Paste everything and then enable. Okay, so I'm going to nicely fit my charts right here. So I have my chart in place. We just need to do a little cleaning. So I'll take off the grid lines, okay, and then take off my x-axis labels. Then we choose to place the data labels here. So once the data label comes in, we can take off the border lines. Okay, so we'll take off the shape outline and then select these bars, come in here and then fill these to match the blue colors that we have, right? Of course, we can format this in the same way we formatted the average salary. I'll select these numbers, press Ctrl 1. Okay, come to my label options to have access to the number. Okay, and the number, I'll choose custom. Okay, and then under format code, I can put in 0.00. Now these numbers are in millions, so I'll put in 2 commas, double quotes M for millions, and then close my double quotes, and then I'll add this. Okay, so there's an easier way to see your numbers. Okay, so now that we have this, we can bring in our slicer. So I'll fit in my slicer right here. So this is my slicer. Okay, so if I select this now, you notice that all my 4 charts are displayed. So we could also bring in the slicer to control this side of the analysis. So standing in here, I'll come to insert. Because we have a data model, I can insert it directly from here. Okay, click open and then insert a department slicer directly here. So I'll bring this here on this side of the dashboard and then split my slicer into 3 columns. Okay, so if I do it this way, I can now hold this and then stretch it to cover the space that I have here. Okay, so I'll highlight this and then I have something like this. Okay, so you could maintain the slicers, but if you're working with this stat worksheet, we've already created the style for the slicer to match the dashboard right here. So you can choose this first one to let it sink in. Okay, now this slicer is supposed to control this side of the dashboard. So once it comes in, it's currently not able to slice. So you can right click the slicer, go to report connections and then you have access to all the pivot tables that are in your workbook. So this was the first pivot table we created. Okay, so I'm going to connect the slicer to this. So I'm going to connect it to these two, and then I'll click OK. Okay, so at this point, I can now see that when I click on any department, okay, my numbers now update to reflect the department I have selected. So we've achieved the main staging for our dashboard. But the way this works, okay, if the user doesn't select anything, we want a caption that would let the user select an item from here. Okay, so what we want to achieve is that if the user doesn't select anything, it renders the chart blank. Okay, so as part of the caption of the dashboard, we want to join the item selected to the caption. Okay, but if the user doesn't select anything, right, so instead of just blank, we would put in a caption that says select an item. Okay, so let's get that done. So to be able to do that, we need to come to our calculations page. Okay, now if we set this to all, what basically happens at the backstage is that the formulas return an error. Essentially, Excel charts can plot an error. That's why we have the blank. So the error in effect is good. So what we want to do here is that instead of showing all, so we want this formula to read select an item. Okay, so we are going to modify this formula with a basic if statement. Okay, so if I was writing this if statement, okay, I would say if this whole formula, okay, is equal to all, okay, Alt Enter to come down, okay, return select item, okay, otherwise repeat the formula. Okay, so otherwise repeat the formula. So I'll close my brackets. Now this is like the old way of writing if statements, right? It makes the whole thing long. So you can do this if you're using an older version, but if you want to make this shorter, what we can do is this. So this gives me the select item. I'm going to show you the let option. So I'll start with the let function. Okay, I want to represent the whole of this formula with X. Okay, the name X, it can be any name, and I'll bring a comma. Right, so basically what I'm saying is that instead of repeating the whole of this, okay, I'm giving it the name X. Now right after the comma, right after the closing brackets of the formula, I'll come here. So let X be equal to that. Alt Enter to come to the next row. Then I'll write my if statement. So I'll say if X is equal to all, okay, then comma, we want the value select item, close double quotes, otherwise return X. Okay, so I'll close this and I'll close that for let. Right, it achieves the same thing. Okay, but for recent versions of Excel, this is easier on the eye. Right, so either way, you can use either the regular if statement or the X. So now that we've written our formula, let's now produce our dynamic caption. Right, so I want to write the caption this way: breaking down annual salary by colon, then whatever I selected comes in here. Right, so I'm going to convert this into a formula. So instead of just typing, I'll put in an equal sign and then put a double quote to hold this as text. Okay, so I can even put a space here. So breaking down annual salary by, then right after that closing brackets, I'll bring a joiner, the ampersand, and then go to my sheets and then select this. Right, so this way you realize that the caption also comes along. Okay, so if I don't select anything, then I get a prompt to select an item. Okay, so that is what we've achieved over here. Now, this chart can be converted to any chart. So if you feel you want to create a donut chart or a tree map out of this, so you could always come and then change the chart type. Okay, So if you choose to use a tree map for this purpose, you can also do that, right? So if I come here, I can add my data labels, okay, and then maybe choose the category and the value names, and even let it come in the new line, okay, so something like this. But what is important here is that instead of creating several charts, 4 in this case, this slicer now controls all the charts that we could have created separately. Okay. So as indicated, we're going to share the start workbook with you so that you can come step by step. You can find it in the video description. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.
If this video was helpful and you would like to receive more of these videos directly on your WhatsApp, you can send ad to this WhatsApp number. We'll add you to our broadcast list so you receive our videos directly. You can also visit our YouTube channel, Finance Skills Hub. All our old videos are here. Please subscribe for notification of new videos, or connect with us on any of these social media handles. Thank you so much for watching.